Welcome to the Prospective Doctor Podcast, brought to you by Med School Coach. Pre-med and medical students alike are encouraged to tune in each week for tips on how to become a strong med school candidate, gain acceptance into the school of your dreams, and succeed on your journey toward residency and becoming a doctor.
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to have our special guest, Dr. Michael Zema, here today with us. I'm going to give him an opportunity to tell us a little bit about himself.
Thank you, Ertita. Simple. Grew up in New Jersey and moved to New York when I went to college. I'm an only child of two middle-class parents. My mother was an elementary school teacher, and my father worked for a food chain, the Grand Union Company, which is no longer in business, but it was A&P's primary competitor decades ago. So that was my background. We lived in a small town in a modest Cape Cod home, had our pet dog, and I guess you could call it a typical middle-class American family. I went on to college and majored in chemistry. I loved chemistry as a high school student. Had a great role model chemistry teacher, Mr. Gunther. I'll never forget him. Made chemistry exciting, and it was exciting enough for me to pick that as my major in college. And somewhere along the line, I think at the end of my sophomore year, the pre-medical honor society approached me because I had a good grade point CUNE, and they said, "Would you like to become pre-med?" I really wasn't, that much into medicine. And I wasn't the kind of kid that, had the little doctor bag as a 5-year-old. I loved science, all aspects of science. But chemistry was my first love. So I joined that society and met a lot of people who were majoring in biology. Very few chemistry majors were pre-med at that time. And I guess at the end of my junior year, the advisor, we all had advisors, said, "Look, you're doing really great in chemistry. You're our number one student, in fact. You've won all the chemistry awards every year, from Phi Lambda Upsilon and Merck Award, et cetera. But, would you ever contemplate taking the medical college admission tests?" I had some exposure through the pre-med society at the college. So I spoke with my parents and I said, I'm not totally decided, but the exam is relatively inexpensive. Since I'm not decided, what do you think? And Mom and Dad were very laid back. They said, "Look, whatever you want, we'll back you." I had good parents. They left the decision making to me, but they said, "We've raised you properly. We know you'll make good decisions. Whatever you decide, we're behind you." So I took the MCATs, did fairly well, and then applied, not only in my senior year to some chemistry PhD programs, but applied to 3 or 4 medical schools, and did well on both ends. Some of the high-end chemistry programs wanted me, and 3 medical schools accepted me. Now decisions, but went ahead and again approached my parents and said, "I've got a scholarship to the chemistry program, but the medical school is a pay, and it's not inexpensive. I don't have that kind of money saved up from my summer jobs. Will you help?" And they said, "If that's what you want, try it for a year. Let's see how you do. You can always go back to chemistry." So I did it, loved it, and the rest is history.
Wow. I love how you just took us through your story in such a captivating manner, because a lot of students do have different introductions into medicine. Some do realize it when they're very young of age. Some are introduced just because they're pretty good at school, and then some have other careers, and then they decide that they have this inkling to pursue medicine through other experiences. So it's very wonderful that you were able to share your unique experience. So then you decided to pursue medicine and you went through your medical school curriculum and decided to become a cardiologist. What drove you to do that?
Well, again, not quite. As a senior at Cornell Medical in Manhattan, you rotated through a number of what's called sub-internships, where you work side by side with an intern, often doing some of those interns' tasks under supervision, of course, and get to experience a number of different fields. One of those sub-internships that I took was in dermatology, and I loved it. I loved academic dermatology, and at the end of that sub-internship, the director of the department met with me and said, look, I will offer you a dermatology fellowship right now. Just do 1 year of internship at Cornell. I'll hold your spot and I'll take you in. I have never seen anybody perform as a senior. Many seniors are just trying to, occupy space, take up some time, breathe some air, and relax. He said, you really put out in that sub-internship. So I was all headed for dermatology. So then I take my 1 year medical internship prior to my dermatology residency / fellowship. And I meet Dr. John Morrison at the North Shore University Hospital in Manhasset, Long Island, where I was doing my internship. It was part of the Cornell system of hospitals. And John was another role model, so exciting as we treated patients with acute heart attacks, placed catheters in them, took them to the lab, did echocardiograms, up all night taking care of critically ill patients in shock. I said to myself, dermatology, while I enjoyed it from an academic perspective, the perspective in the community was derm, zits. You really want to take care of zits. You really, dermatology, if it's dry, wet it. If it's wet, dry it. Remember dermatology years ago, before monoclonal antibodies, we had steroids and we had steroids. We had very little in the way of immunosuppressants. So I said, you know what? Cardiology is exciting. I'm going to see if I can get into cardiology program, which means I need to do 2 more years of internal medicine. I was in a tough IM program, but I lined things up with the idea that I would get a cardiology fellowship after that. And I was on my way to my junior year or PGY2 of IM after I completed my internship.
That is a really interesting story, and it just kind of connects like how when you were in college, you met a mentor who encouraged you to go into something else, and then you found people that kind of help you shape your path moving forward. And for the listeners out there, if you can't tell, Dr. Zema is an interesting and wonderful storyteller, which kind of makes sense because he's an author. So you recently published a book called Modern Healthcare Delivery, Deliverance or Debacle, A Glimpse from the Inside Out. Can you give us a glimpse as to what prompted you to write this book?
I was struck, Arkita, by the general community's naivety about a subject so fundamentally important to each and every one of us. Indeed, when I would speak with not just colleagues, but friends, literally people at a social club, the degree of misinformation out there on healthcare was astounding. I said, there really is a void here. There really is a book that's begging to be written, not just for healthcare providers and their students, not just for administrators, but for the lay public as well.
That makes a lot of sense. 2 of the chapters are called Better Healthcare for Less. There's a 1.0 version and a 2.0 version. How do you believe that we can achieve better healthcare for less?
Well, the 1.0 version, chapter 7, deals with the Band-Aids, as I call it in the book, the Band-Aids that have been applied to our healthcare system over the past few decades to attempt to change us from a volume-based system where payment is based upon how much you do, to a value-based system where payment is based upon how much better you make the patient's outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Included in those would be the pay for performance, which is a model that offers financial incentives to physicians, hospitals, medical groups for meeting certain performance. Accountable care organizations. These are groups of primary healthcare providers that have agreed to be held accountable for both cost and quality for a group of insured beneficiaries. Bundled payments of care, where instead of paying for your surgeon, your anesthesiologist, your internist, your rehab, the insurance company would have a packet of money, a bundle, that you would have to divide amongst those providers and do it as efficiently as you could without sacrificing quality of care. This is the 1.0 version. Unfortunately, as I point out in the book, it just didn't cut it. We just didn't generate enough savings. Our healthcare system occupies 18% of the gross domestic product of this country and rising every day. It is not sustainable. Hence the shift, if you will, on the part of the government and private payers to change from a volume-based to a value-based. But unfortunately, in these early attempts, while quality may have been slightly improved, and that's debatable, the savings was infinitesimal. The book goes into a number of reasons why that occurred, but it basically said, we need to go to version 2.0, and we need to start talking about it sooner rather than later. Otherwise, our healthcare system will become a debacle. Hence the name of the book, Deliverance or Financial Debacle. Now in 2.0, I said, okay, why are we facing a financial debacle in healthcare? And there are numerous reasons, but I focused on waste, which is the performance of unnecessary services, the fee-for-service model, which rewards providers who do more services, the old adage, you eat what you kill, the practice of defensive medicine, and the excessive administrative costs associated with our multi-payer healthcare system. Now, we can talk at length in regard to all of them, but they're all interconnected, and I make that point in the book. If you're going to intervene in any of these, you have to soon realize that they're all inexorably interlaced, and they all four of those, at least the first three, but perhaps the fourth also, require a behavioral change on behalf of the provider. The provider is the gatekeeper. Without the doctor or the other providers, there is no healthcare. If there's no healthcare, there is no bill, there is no charge. So ultimately, the gatekeeper is the provider, and we need to have a behavioral change of our providers. And it's not easy to change behavior. And I go into the motives that prompt behavioral change and offer some suggestions as to how one can accomplish that and therefore intervene on all four of those money holes, if you will, that are eating up our healthcare system financially.
At Med School Coach, we know that getting into medical school is hard. In fact, 60% of pre-meds who apply to a medical school don't even get accepted. And if you want to get accepted into a top medical school, it's even harder. That's why more students than ever are turning to MCAT tutoring by Med School Coach. Our tutors are all 99th percentile scorers, have been through rigorous training, and can help raise your MCAT score by 12 points or more. You need every competitive advantage you can get to get into med school, so why not get one-on-one tutoring from Med School Coach? Our expert team will create a custom program just for you and help you master MCAT content where you need the help most. You'll raise your MCAT score. We guarantee it. Visit us online at medschoolcoach.com and use offer code PODCAST10 to save 10% up to $400 on a Med School Coach MCAT tutoring package. You can achieve your medical school dreams, and Med School Coach can help.
I love that. And for all of the listeners out there, the majority of our listeners are either pre-med or med students. It's very important to kind of get this foundational information, because a lot of times in the curriculum in medical schools, they focus on a lot of the disease processes and management. But a lot of the things that you'll be encountering after that are things about the healthcare system. They're interconnected in that business of medicine component, and it's how you'll be reimbursed. And it's kind of a taboo subject to talk about money and compensation and then financial aspects, because a lot of you guys are altruistic and definitely there to help your patients. But all of those things kind of affect how patient care is provided. So I think that it is a great idea to pick up Dr. Zema's book. Where can people find it?
Arkita, let me say one other thing too. I think it's never too early for these students.
Absolutely.
Even as far back as pre-med, to get an appreciation and an understanding of the nearly century-old healthcare system in this country. And we talk about that, the history of it, how it evolved, et cetera, because these are the men and women who in the future will have the power to intervene and hopefully change it for the better.
Absolutely.
And as far as where you can get a copy of the book, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles in hard copy, and it is now available digitally, Apple Books, Amazon Kindle, Barnes & Noble Nooks, Google Play, etc. So it's out there. Just Google the title, Modern Healthcare Delivery. That's probably enough of the title, and Michael Zema, and it should come up on your computer or on your smartphone.
Yes, and our team will definitely place some links in the show notes for those listeners who are listening wherever podcasts are found. If you click that subscribe button. Now back to another question. You just mentioned it, like our students are the future of medicine, the future of healthcare leadership, and they're going to change the way that we practice medicine. Therefore, leadership is inevitable, whether it be via student groups, other residents working with more senior or residents and students, or leading interdisciplinary teams or healthcare organizations. What skills do you believe are necessary for developing leaders?
Well, in no particular order. Let me emphasize that. Empathy and social skills. Mm-hmm. People may not remember what you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. One elderly clinician once told me, patients do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Mm. Particularly in today's world of high tech, and I'll probably allude to this later, social skills appear to be lacking. I see this not just in individuals in my career path, but across the board. And it's so important. It's so important in the laying on of hands and the healing of patients. So I would put that probably as number one, empathy and social skills. Number two might be develop an aptitude for seeing the bigger picture, i.e. pick your battles carefully. Develop the ability to lead people from the basement of disagreement, if you will, to the toolbox of getting things done. Build a consensus. When dealing with other individuals, think and, don't think or. Think and help create a win-win scenario. Number three would be an attentive and active listener. Another professor of mine once said, hearing and listening are two very different things. Young people have the ability to hear. God bless, I wish my ears were as good as they were 40 years ago when examining the heart. But listening is something that you have to develop. Manage up and lead up. By manage up, I mean never let your boss or supervisor be surprised by what you do. An example might be, house staff that's unhappy with the call schedule. You should let your chief resident know about that. Give him or her the details. Lead up might be going to that chief resident and saying, here's a suggestion that I could give you, boss, on how to possibly make this better. Now, you share key decisions with your supervisor or boss through this process. It doesn't mean copy him with every single email that you send. When you do that, in essence, you're trying to cover yourself, if you will, by making your boss accountable for your job. No. Your supervisor or boss wants you to be accountable. Mm-hmm. So manage up and lead up, but know how to do it properly. Next, maintain transparency, in timeliness, in content, and in follow-up. We hear so much today about transparency in the political world and other places, but certainly it has its place in medicine too. Always maintain transparency. You'll get respect that way. And lastly, use all digital media respectfully and cautiously. Try never to outwardly express your anger on digital media. If you're upset, wait an hour, wait a day if you have to, before addressing a specific issue. Angry outbursts make people defensive. Constructively expressing your concerns, on the other hand, lets others stay open to listening and improving. Remember, what you post on digital media stays with you forever. That's probably my take on leadership skills.
At Med School Coach, we know that matching into the specialty of your choice and the residency program of your dreams has a dramatic impact on your career as a physician. And your USMLE score is the most important acceptance factor of all. That's why more students than ever are turning to Med School Coach for USMLE tutoring. Our tutors are all 260 plus scorers and have been through rigorous training. Plus, the average student who uses Med School Coach tutoring raises their score by 23 to 55 points. There is an enormous amount of material you need to know for Step 1 and Step 2, and Med School Coach can help you be smart about how to study. We'll create a custom program just for you. Then, we'll help you master USMLE concepts where you need help most. You'll raise your USMLE score. We guarantee it. Visit us online at medschoolcoach.com and use offer code PODCAST10 to save 10% up to $400 on a Med School Coach USMLE tutoring package. You can achieve your medical school dreams, and Med School Coach can help.
I appreciate that. I think that you gave so many pearls of wisdom that can affect many facets of life, not only at work, because you'll deal with this in school, you'll deal with it on the wards, you'll deal with it when you get a job, but you can also use some of those tips for your daily life. And a lot of it in terms of social media, with there being an uptake in social media, it can be great for patient education or learning and stuff in these days and these times, especially now with the Zoom environment. But knowing and realizing that whatever you post can be brought up and used in the future. So make sure that it's something that you would like to reflect from yourself. And in terms of your first one, when you were talking about empathy first, I loved what you said that one of your mentors told you, and one of my mentors gave me a similar piece of advice where they were like, you may see 20 or 30 patients in a day, but for most people, you're the only doctor that they're going to see. So give them that respect and that time and that encouragement and attention to detail that you would have given your first patient of the day. So I think that for you listeners out there, I can definitely identify, and I wish that someone like Dr. Zema had told me a lot of these things before early on. So it may be a good idea to take out your notebook and rewind this so that you can write those down. So I really appreciate you joining us today. I think that, as I just mentioned, we learned so many valuable points. And I'm looking forward. I haven't read your book yet, but I'm looking forward to purchasing that. I encourage everyone else to take a look at the book as well. And I'll give you an opportunity to tell us goodbye.
Thank you so much, Arkita, for your time. If there are any other questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them for you or your audience.
Perfect. Is there any way that someone can reach out to you?
There is. I'm on LinkedIn, and if they ask to friend me or to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd be more than happy to. LinkedIn, of course, is a free service, so any of them that are not on LinkedIn, they can join up immediately.
Yes, I would definitely recommend LinkedIn. It's my favorite social media platform, and it's for professional growth, and you can learn and connect from other physicians. So if you don't have a LinkedIn, definitely sign up for one, but also take the advice that we just told you and remain professional on it. So thank you so much. And we're going to end for today. But for all those listeners out there, I just ask that you click the subscribe button, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Each episode of the Prospective Doctor podcast is brought to you by Med School Coach. To access articles, videos, webinars, and free tools to help you succeed on your journey toward medical school and beyond, visit our website, prospectivedoctor.com. We hope you tune in again next time.